You feel it in the quiet moments, when the noise of the world finally loosens its grip and the room becomes honest. That subtle hollow ache behind your thoughts, that soft collapse inside your chest, that strange sense that something is missing even when your life looks complete from the outside. It rises like a tide that never fully arrives, a presence shaped like absence. You try to breathe through it, yet the breath seems to fall short before it reaches the center. And for a second, you wonder if this is simply who you have become. It is an emptiness that does not shout. It waits. It lingers in the background, like a shadow following you through every corridor of your day. You distract yourself, you move faster, you fill your hours with people and plans, but when the night returns, it finds you again. It sits beside your bed like an old companion. It knows your name. It knows where you hide. And part of you is tired. Not in the way the body gets tired, but in the way the soul grows weary when it has been unheard for too long. You sense this faint distance between who you are and who you pretend to be, and this distance feels like a silent winter, a forest without fire, a temple whose lanterns have been left unlit. You tell yourself it is temporary, yet it returns with the persistence of a dream that wants to be understood. You try to ignore it, but it keeps placing its hand on your shoulder. Something in you wants to awaken, although you cannot yet name what it is. You feel the pull, the stirring in the dark, the quiet invitation to step through a door you have avoided for years. And beneath it all, something still calls your name. You begin to sense that this emptiness is not a flaw in you. It is not a failure. It is not a sign that you are broken beyond repair. It is more like a quiet signal from the depths, a soft echo from the parts of you that have been buried under years of expectations and noise. It resembles a river that changed course long ago, leaving behind a dry bed that still remembers the sound of water. And when you listen closely, you notice that the ache is not barren at all. It is fertile. It asks for attention the way the earth asks for rain. Jung understood this space well, the place where the soul withdraws from the surface so it can gather itself again. When the outer world no longer reflects who you are becoming, a gap forms, a thinning of the veil, a subtle disconnect between your actions and your inner truth. And this gap feels like emptiness, a pause without language, a night without stars. You sense it as loss, but it is actually a sign of movement. The psyche pulling you inward, urging you to shed the skins that no longer fit. You feel this when you look at your life and wonder why the things that used to satisfy you now feel dim. When the mirror shows a face you recognize, yet the eyes carry a distant question. When familiar paths feel narrow. When the roles you play begin to feel like costumes worn out by repetition. The emptiness comes as a reminder that something in you refuses to live on autopilot. Something refuses the half-lived story. Something refuses to be silenced. It appears like a shadow at first, not because it is dark, but because it is waiting. It waits for you to turn inward, to meet the truth you have postponed. It waits for you to hear the whisper beneath your thoughts, the breath beneath your breath. And as you listen, the sensation begins to shift. The emptiness becomes a doorway rather than a void, a quiet invitation to descend into the deeper rooms of your being, where your forgotten desires and unlived possibilities rest like seeds under winter soil. This is why the feeling grows stronger when your life becomes too external, too focused on performance, too shaped by what others expect you to be. The soul retreats to the forest of your inner world, gathering light in the dark, waiting for you to follow. And each time you ignore the call, the emptiness expands. Not as punishment, but as guidance. It widens the space until you cannot walk around it anymore. Slowly, you begin to see that the emptiness is not a sign of absence. It is the presence of something unrealized, a silent flame, a hidden temple within you, preparing for its own awakening. The night around it is not the end. It is the beginning of dawn. You feel the emptiness most sharply in those moments when the world grows quiet, when the conversation ends, when the music fades, when the door closes behind you and you are left with your own breath. It spreads through you like a slow mist, soft yet heavy, and you sense it settling in your chest. You try to name it, but it escapes every definition. It feels like standing at the edge of a vast field at night, unable to see where the land ends or where you begin. A silence that holds you, yet does not comfort you. Inside this silence, you start to notice faint movements, a restlessness that feels ancient, a longing that you have carried for years without realizing it. The psyche stirs beneath the surface, and you sense the presence of a forgotten part of yourself. Jung would say that this is the moment when the shadow begins to speak, not to threaten you, but to gather you, to remind you of the pieces you left behind while trying to become the version of yourself the world would accept. This emptiness is often the first sign that something essential has been abandoned, a dream you postponed, a truth you silenced, a desire you once held like a flame. These parts do not vanish. They drift into the deeper forest of your inner world, waiting like hidden animals in the dark. The more you distance yourself from them, the more the emptiness grows, because the soul cannot thrive without its own fire. Imagine standing in a darkened temple with no lanterns lit. The walls are intact. The structure is strong. Yet without light, you cannot feel its sacredness. The emptiness you feel is the absence of that flame, the reminder that your inner sanctuary has gone unvisited for too long. And this recognition, subtle as it is, pushes you gently toward the deeper rooms of yourself, toward a truth you can no longer ignore. You begin to see that the emptiness is not simply a void. It is a mirror, a still surface that reflects everything you have avoided facing. When you look into it, you notice the faint outlines of your unmet needs, the quiet wounds you learned to carry without complaint, the emotions you pushed aside because they felt too heavy or too inconvenient for the life you were trying to maintain. They rise like shapes beneath dark water, not to frighten you, but to be acknowledged at last. And the more you look, the more familiar they become. The psyche speaks through symbols when words no longer reach you. It shows you the image of a locked door deep within your inner house. You walked past this door countless times, telling yourself you would open it someday. Yet the key remained untouched in your pocket. Behind it lies the part of you that stopped receiving sunlight, the child who learned to be quiet, the dreamer who was told to be realistic, the lover who was asked to be strong even when breaking inside. All of them wait behind that door, shaping the emptiness you feel now. Jung understood that what you ignore does not disappear. It sinks. It gathers weight. It becomes the shadow that moves beside you, not to harm you, but to balance you. And when the imbalance becomes too great, the emptiness expands until it reaches your awareness. It forces you to pause, to breathe differently, to ask questions you were not ready to ask before. It pushes you to place your hand on the forgotten door. Imagine walking through a forest at dusk. The trees are tall, the air is cool, and the path is narrow. The further you walk, the deeper the silence becomes. Yet in that silence, you sense life all around you. The emptiness inside you feels like this forest, quiet but alive, waiting for you to light a small fire at its center so you can see what has always been there. And this realization brings you one step closer to yourself. As you move closer to what the emptiness wants to reveal, you notice a subtle warmth rising beneath the cold. It feels like the first breath of dawn after a long night. Soft, hesitant, but unmistakably alive. You begin to sense that this space inside you is not here to consume you. It is here to guide you back to your own center, a center you drifted away from while trying to hold the world on your shoulders. The emptiness appears when you lose the thread that ties you to your inner fire, and now it whispers that the thread is still within reach. The psyche begins to unfold its symbols more clearly. You see not a void, but an unlit chamber, a place where your true nature has been waiting patiently for your return. This chamber is not empty because nothing exists there. It is empty because everything there has been left untouched. The qualities you abandoned, the passions you silenced, the instincts you mistrusted. They sit like sealed jars on ancient shelves, filled with essence you have not tasted in years. This is the part of you that Jung called the self, the inner nucleus of meaning that waits beneath all your noise. You feel the tension between who you became and who you truly are. The persona you showed the world served its purpose, but it cannot sustain you forever. The emptiness emerges when that mask begins to crack, when your soul refuses to live as a faint echo of itself. It asks you to step beyond the image you crafted and into the raw, unfiltered truth of your deeper nature. And although this step feels like walking into a night forest with only a small lantern, something in you knows the way. Imagine a river frozen over during winter. On the surface, everything looks still. Yet beneath the ice, the water continues to move. The emptiness is the thin ice layer that must melt so the river can flow again. And as this realization settles in your chest, you feel the first signs of thaw, the beginning of movement, the return of your own breath. You begin to notice how all the pieces fit together, the silence that once frightened you, the shadow that waited at the edge of your awareness, the locked door you avoided for years, the frozen river beneath your ribs. None of them were separate. They were different faces of the same calling, a gentle insistence from your deeper self, asking you to slow down, to listen, to return. And as you breathe into this realization, something inside you loosens. The emptiness shifts from a wound into a space wide enough to hold the truth of who you are becoming. You feel the night inside you begin to lighten, not suddenly, but with the slow grace of an approaching dawn. The forest of your inner world reveals small sparks of warmth between the trees. The temple within you glows faintly, as if an unseen caretaker has just lit the first lantern after years of darkness. What once felt hollow now feels open. What once felt lost now feels like the beginning of a path. And as you stand in this tender luminosity, you sense that the emptiness was never your enemy. It was your guide. You breathe again, this time deeper, this time without fear. The river under the ice begins to move, and you can feel the quiet thaw spreading through you. The light and the shadow meet without conflict. The inner and outer selves move closer to one another. There is a new coherence forming inside you, a new rhythm. And in that rhythm, you realize that nothing was missing after all. You were simply being called home. You sit with yourself now in a different way. The silence that once felt sharp has softened. It feels like a room you can finally enter without bracing. You sense the warmth in your chest, gentle and steady, like a candle that learned to burn without asking permission. The emptiness is no longer a threat. It has become a space where your truth can breathe again, where your forgotten parts can stretch their limbs and return to the light. You begin to notice the small movements within you, the subtle pull toward what feels real, the quiet refusal to keep abandoning yourself. These movements are your compass, guiding you toward the life that mirrors your inner world rather than contradicts it. You feel the shadow nearby, not as darkness, but as depth. A reminder that wholeness includes every room of your inner house, every dream, every wound, every forgotten flame. In the next days, you will feel moments where the old emptiness tries to echo again. Let it echo. Let it speak. Let it show you where you are still divided from yourself. You do not need to fill the space. You only need to listen, because this space is not absence. It is becoming, and as you breathe into that quiet becoming, you feel a soft presence rising within you once more. A presence that sounds like your own name spoken with love.